Oh, that's good.
Can you see all right? Yes, thank
Yeah,
you.
if anybody wants, so I'm going to be working like this. So I've kind of lowered these, so, and got it slightly different angle, and I'm going to try and paint facing you this time. So the reason for that is, with watercolours, it's better to have your work at a very slight angle, perhaps something like that. This is probably still a little bit steep, but if you can get your work lower, that'd be ideal. So if you've got something like a bit of board, and you could put like a pencil case underneath it, that would be the ideal angle for watercolours, something like that. Yeah, so you want it to just gently roll down, but not kind of go swimming off the end. That's that. So we've got 4-week project, and what I'm really going to cover is the absolute basics. So some of these may be well beyond you anyway, you may be much further down the road, but I've noticed some people who are using watercolours really, obviously haven't had any sort of instruction at all, or haven't had any sort of ideas. So I want to just really cover the basic washes, and some exercises that you could apply those to. So the exercises I'm really thinking are, reasonably quick exercises. Hopefully we'll manage 2 or 3 or 3 or 4 or 5 within a session. So it's quick, small studies. Years and years ago, when I first started teaching watercolours, I found that some of my students were pretty good at drawing, and they'd spend an hour drawing, and then within a few minutes they would completely mess up the watercolour because they really didn't know about the watercolour side of it. So I always find it quite a difficult medium, and I've been practising a bit in the evenings, just trying to get my hand in it. Because as you know, I'm an oil painter rather than a watercolourist. The sort of things I do are, they're more kind of sketches, so I very rarely exhibit watercolours, but these are like little sketchbook works. I might be trying out an idea, or if I'm just out, with friends sketching, and we're having a drink or something like that. So, it's a nice medium because it's nice and small and portable. But for me, it's more like making studies than paintings that I exhibit. So there's a couple of sketches there. That was quite a recent one. And what I'm thinking is that black and white, or just one, a little bit of light and dark, is a really good place to start. So certainly within this next 4 weeks, I'm not particularly going to encourage, you can use colour, but I'm not really going to colour mixing, really. You can do an awful lot with black and white, and again, that's another little sketchbook that, I can sometimes take out with me. There's a few sketches there. Right, so that's a little bit about the background to it. Talk a little bit about materials. What I would advise, so this is my current palette box, or palette. So this is quite a nice little box. I bought this reasonably recently, and I was inspired by John, who got one, and one or two others. So this, with this kind of box, you can just squeeze out the tubes of paint into these little compartments. You've got nice deep mixing wells, and that's really a feature of watercolour. So you need somewhere like a little dish type thing to mix the paint in, because
So where did you get that?
I think it's online, Jackson's or something like that. Online. I get most of my materials from Jackson's. So I wait until I need, I've got 40-50 quid's worth, and I'll just get some from Jackson's. You probably, I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere like Hobbycraft does these. What I'd advise is sort of, something like that. So I think this was probably 12-15 quid. Something simpler. And the nice thing about this is I can just shut that up and keep the paint for next time. But this is a good palette, and these are a lot cheaper. These are probably, 4 or 5 quid or something like that. Again, you've got places to put the paint, lots of nice deep wells to mix your watercolours. So that's a great palette too. Quite often watercolours come a little bit like this in these little pans. And this was a box that somebody gave me. One of my students, I think, gave me this. So this, if anybody wants to use this, they're welcome to use this. These aren't bad, but they're quite a job to get the paint out, I find. So what I tend to do is, once I've used it up, I tend to just fill it up with tube paint. And I've got another, this is the little box that I tend myself to take out with me when I'm sketching. And the nice thing about that is it's a bit smaller than the plastic one. So if we're somewhere like in a pub where there isn't a lot of room, you can just do a little bit of sketching with that.
That looks loved.
It is loved, yeah. So again, this is one, I did have a slightly bigger one of this. I've still got it. But one of my students gave me this. It's an old Reeves one. So this is, that's quite good. That's, yeah, and I've got, that's another one. That was the one I was using before. There's various shapes and sizes. For going outdoors, something not too big is good. Yeah, but in the studio, obviously, you know, you've got plenty of space, stretch it out. So that's the paints themselves. What I would advise you do is, if you're getting paints, the ones to go for are, well, there's Winsor & Newton Cotman paints. And for this project, you're welcome to use any that I've got here. If you want to use some of this, just come and get a little bit of this. But if you want to buy this, either Daler Rowley Aquafine or Winsor & Newton Cotman. So they're like a student quality paint. The sort of paint you get in the cheap shops, it's good for children, but it's not. You're not going to get great results with it, I'm afraid. Some are better than others. I've got some Reeves ones here that aren't too bad, but I find that the tops tend to break over those. And then other ones, they seem to inflate their own accord. But these are a good student brand. So if you haven't got any watercolours already, this would be the place to start. You can get much better quality watercolours than this. You can get artist quality. I think these are a couple of quid each. The artist ones are probably going to be perhaps a £5 each, and they'll be a little bit smaller tubes. And yeah, if you can afford to stretch to those, that's well worth it. But what I suggest is just get a couple of colours to start with, just like a brown or black or blue or something like that. Don't worry too much about getting 40, 50 colours, just get a couple. And that's a good place to start. With brushes, you can get, again, quite a range of brushes. This one is I think this is a Rowney brush, and this is probably about 8 or 10 quid, something like that. You can get much more expensive brushes than that. And then this set, which I thought I'd try this set, which I've got this from Lidl's for about 3 quid, so I'll see what these are like. They're not going to be quite as good. I probably won't be able to get quite a good point, but they're probably not too bad. So that's brushes. Paper. So the paper I use comes in A3 size sheets. Right. So this is the paper I use, and it's a reasonable quality watercolour paper. If anybody would like some of this, I'll sell this at 40p a sheet. That's 40p a sheet. And with the exercises we do, you could do maybe 4 little exercises there, and then if they work, that's great. If not, you can just turn them over and do 4 more on the back. But that is, as you can see, it's reasonably thin. So you'll find that watercolour paper will sort of couple. As it gets wet, it will sort of expand a bit. The other thing about this paper is it's got a little bit of a texture, and it's got like a glue size. So what happens is when you put the watercolour wash on, it will just sit nicely on the surface. And it will, if you want to do a nice flat wash, the texture helps it flatten out a little bit. So that's what I would, if you're doing watercolours, I advise use watercolour paper.
Are both sides the same?
More or less, yeah. There's a slight difference in the texture, but this particular paper you can use it either side. Yeah, either side is fine. I've also got a little guillotine in, so if you want to buy some, you just chop it up. There's a guillotine in the kitchen. So it just helps off. Right, I use this bit stylus. So the most basic technique is to just create a flat wash. So I'm thinking this is an exercise we could do, which is based on this photograph of just sort of kind of misty mountains, that sort of thing. So it's a nice, very basic exercise. But to be able to do that, you need to be able to just get a wash that's flat. With watercolour, traditional watercolourists, they don't really use white. You may use the odd speck here and there, but in general, you wouldn't use white. So what you're using is this nice bright white paper, and you get these lovely sort of transparent, glowing effects through just using the white of the paper shown through. So I'll just draw a rough rectangle and just try and do a flat wash within that area. So the first thing is to just get plenty of paint mixed. So I'm just going to. So you could perhaps create. I mean, the easiest way would be to use a big brush like that. So that's one way to paint that in. But I'm actually going to try and do it with a slightly smaller brush, just to show you. But I'll just get plenty of water out here. So the first thing is to make sure you've got enough paint mixed, because you don't want to start remixing halfway through. So that's just, and I'm just going to make a wash out of a, can be just a grey wash, maybe a little bit of red in it, just to warm it up a little bit. So I can't really tip that and show you because it will end up on the floor. But you're welcome to come in closer if you want. So what I'll try and do is just get a flat wash using this. So just starting from the top, and that's quite nice because you've got this kind of bead of paint. You see how it's sort of quite darker there. And then the nice thing about that is it will keep that edge wet. And I can just go backwards and forwards. That's, as you can see, my angle's too steep, so let's dribble down. So you basically just keep going backwards and forwards until you've got your paint. So really, probably with a brush like that, you could probably paint the whole painting. I'm painting this size just so you can see what I can do, but I would suggest paint half this size really. And some of these little, move these out of the way so I don't get paint. The exercises I've been practicing, just practicing at home, I've actually worked half this size. So you can see this will gradually, and I want to end at the border here. So that gives me a reasonably flat wash. We have a bit of rag, and then where I've got this bit at the bottom, I just need to mop that up a little bit and wipe that on rag. Otherwise, that will spoil the wash. You'll get a kind of what they call rumbacks. So the water will drain out and the pigment will be left behind. So that is, a reasonably flat wash. So that's quite a good exercise to try to start with. And then with that, you could find the. So this. So with this image here, so tell you what, it doesn't have to be exactly that. You can do your own version of that. I'll take that out of the plastic so you can see it. So that was a version I did last night, and that's another one I've started. So the idea is sort of flat washes and progressively getting a little bit darker. Yeah, so that first one I just did that bit, that one a little bit darker still. That was the first one I did, but I felt like I got a little bit too dark here and even darker there. So I thought, well, I'll have another go and just see if I can get them to come down in steps. So I'll just do a little bit more on this one, just to show you how you could then apply a flat wash to that bit there. And this probably just wants to be a little bit. The other thing that's quite a good idea with watercolour is to just have a little bit of scrap paper somewhere so that you can just test out what the wash is going to look like. And you'll find that these will dry a little bit lighter than how they look wet. When you see them in the palette, that looks really dark, but once I put that down as a wash, it's fairly light. It's probably lighter than that one there. So I need to get that a little bit darker. So I should just start that again. Another thing that's quite a good idea with watercolours is to have 2 pots of water. So you can wash your brush in one and then go dipping into clean water for the other. So let's just go a little bit darker. Test that out on there. Try that. I think a little bit darker still. And that way, it won't look too. It's just exactly the same process of starting at the top. Got my paint mix here, I've got plenty of paint mix. And just carefully following that down. And you'll find that if you invest a bit of time in these basic exercises, it will really pay off when you come to try and do some actual painting, some actual watercolour paintings. What I would need to do now is let this dry before I do the next stage. So in a way, it's worth having a couple of different exercises on the go, so that while this one is drying, I've got another one on the go. So, quite a few of these, perhaps this size, you could have 3 or 4 going and then just keep swapping them over. Again, that's going to be a little bit, it's paddling a little bit there, so I'll just soak up that excess paint there, just so that I don't get runbacks. It's like you need to get it wet, but you need it wet enough, but not too wet. So that's the bit where experience comes in. You just have to kind of keep trying them out. So that's really the first exercise. Is that enough to go on with for the minute? Yeah. So that's quite a good one to do. I can always do another one after the break or something like that. Yeah. Okay. So if anybody wants to have a go at that, I'll get the prints out.